This presentation focuses on the concept of facadism, but really focusing on Northern Ireland's temporary shop fronts, presented by myself, Ian Montgomery, and the presentation has been developed in partnership with Dr. Ruth Brolly, both of us from Ulster University in the United Kingdom. In terms of presentation overview, we will look at permanent facades and adaptive reuse, where facades are sympathetically integrated within buildings. We will look at scale and alignment, and where facades are unsympathetically integrated. We will also look at utility problem solvers, phases used to test new technologies, and statement facades. Using Northern Ireland as a case study to investigate temporary facades, we will look at their purpose, their design, and their legacy. The term facade can mean the principal front of a building that faces onto a street or open space, although it can also mean a deceptive outward appearance. This presentation argues that the ambiguity around this term and the interrelationships with other aspects of perception and communication make for a complex interpretation. While often located in areas of severe urban deprivation, graphic false facades have now become a common sight not only in cities and their suburbs, but in picturesque rural towns and villages often frequented by tourists. In the movie The Truman Show, Truman Burbank lives at a constructed false reality movie set populated by actors. The sets are pristine and the characters are perfectly behaved, albeit presented in that glossy Hollywood way. Goldberger's 1985 New York Times article states that buildings are three-dimensional objects, not stage sets, and by turning them into false fronts or objects altogether different in size and scale, we deny them their true essence and render the streetscape ridiculous. Of course, false realities are nothing new, as when Catherine the Great sailed along the Dnieper River in the Crimea during 1787, seeking the political backing of her ambassadorial guests, her alleged lover Gregory Potemkin had erected false portable settlements constructed solely of building facades as a means of representing economic prosperity. This example, from the town of Sigil in Russia, shows camouflaged, dilapidated buildings ahead of a 2013 visit by Vladimir Putin. Taken by Austrian photographer Gregor Seeler, he has completed a whole series of projects looking at Potemkin villages worldwide, including military training installations. The Potemkin village metaphor features in aspects of modern politics and economics in reference to physical environments including Shanghai and in other locations worldwide. The Rome Stock Exchange stands within a large ancient temple, of which 11 Corinthian columns have been preserved on the long side of the stock exchange. In ancient times this was the site of the Hadrianum, the temple of the Emperor Hadrian. In 1985, Goldberger, again in the New York Times, wrote about Rome, when we see buildings inserted behind or within or around the facades of ruins of old ones, these new structures are not all that different in size, and as such they defer to the old facades. For all the difference in style, they do not defy them. The opposite is true of New York. Regarding the non-adaptive reuse of facades, this is Belfast Donegal Square Methodist Church before its redevelopment by the Ulster Bank. This is the same building after redevelopment by the Ulster Bank. The architectural historian C.E.B. Brett says that now that it has acquired, that's the Ulster Bank, acquired yet another ready-made speculative venture, an appalling 6-storey intrusion into the city's central square with the classical facade of the listed 1851 Methodist Church glued onto its front in the forlorn hope of pacifying the conservation lobby, a ludicrous example of facadism at its most spurious. But not all facades are in any way integrated. For example, Wainwright comments that the fine frontage of what was once the Cock-a-Hoop Tavern, with varying brick courses rising to ornamental stone scrollwork, now stands like a surreal stage set, propped on pins in front of a completely unrelated building. Schumacher also said that facadism denotes the conception of a main elevation to a building, that is, a frontispiece, where there is a concentration of emphasis at the expense of the flanks and rear. Purpose-built, bespoke, permanent false facades have been used in residential streets in large cities, like this example in Leinster Gardens in London. When the Metropolitan line passed through Leinster Gardens, linking Paddington and Bayswater stations, numbers 23 and 24 were pulled down to allow room for construction. But rather than rebuild them, the railway company created a pair of false fronts, elegant facades that looked exactly like their 5-story neighbours, but were in fact just 5 foot thick. The only clue that you are looking at false frontage comes from the fact that the front doors have no letterboxes, and if you look closely you will see the painted windows are not sporting curtains like their neighbours. More recently, the University of Michigan opened Ann Arbor M City in 2015, covering 32 acres, which was created using fake streets and shop fronts, building facades, as a means of real-world simulation to test autonomous vehicles. Constructed art installations also feature as key facade interventions. For example, the artist Alex Chinnick's 2013 project in Margate in Kent, England, entitled From the Knees of My Nose to the Belly of My Toes, was designed to regenerate the area. In addition to causing delight when residents happen upon this intervention, the designer hopes to draw visitors up the hill from the centre of Margate, where high-profile projects like the Turner Contemporary Gallery by David Chipperfield are using culture as a tool for regeneration. And now moving specifically to the Northern Ireland context and the phenomenon of temporary facades. Since 1998, Belfast has seen significant transformation on a built environment scarred by decades of sectarian conflict. Modernisation programmes have included the renovation and building of new office, commercial and residential spaces in the city. The re-imaging of place was a corporate vision for neutrality and cultural inclusion, departing from at one time visible references to a sectarian past in order to entice commerce and tourism. Retail regeneration has seen the creation of new commercial shopping centres, providing covered retail experiences and Disneyfied spaces. The Victoria Square scheme alone was a £300 million urban regeneration project in Belfast city centre, providing around 800,000 square foot of retail and leisure space over 4 floors, with 1,000 car parking spaces and 106 apartments. Architectural initiatives have seen a city formerly largely comprised of low-rise, red brick Victorian buildings transformed into a postmodern vision of a global city. Over and above the built environment, the city's commercial signage, traditionally denotative of place, has received culturally neutralising interventions, while global brands, for a long time absent in Belfast, now dominate the city centre, identical to those in any global city: Apple, Foot Locker, Starbucks, Zara. C. Hang, Kwok and Kopulus say that in the context of the built environment, the global city appears to be any global city, where what has been concealed is not the facade, but uniqueness. Promised new landmarks become unmarked any place whatevers, in light of neoliberal monotony and disappearance of significance, illustrates not an unfamiliar in the familiar, but a familiar in the unfamiliar. Focusing on fake shop fronts in particular, the research provides photographic examples of fake frontages from Belfast Jutenars Road, a key commercial corridor into the city and an area in socio-economic decline, as well as examples from other parts of Northern Ireland. The images, taken from 2010 to the present day, demonstrate the extent of alterations in the street, eradicating evidence of culture, history and myth, muting local voices and suppressing representations of group ideology in a city where personal and community expression is integral to the identity of people and place. Although the key target for reimaging has been the city centre, the ramifications of such city planning have extended beyond the city centre into the city surrounding streets and the villages across Northern Ireland. As a result of what has been an amnesia-inducing and culturally cleansing reimaging of place, there have been far-reaching implications for the built environments of local communities. These complex and well-established design narratives are often absent, where commerce speaks of local economic agendas and signage would be normally created by local stakeholders with modest aspirations. Measures around 2013-14 aimed to rectify the marked visual and economic decline on streets surrounding the city centre, which saw bespoke signage replaced with mass-produced corporate signage which conforms to a narrow visual plan stipulated by local government. Such interventions desensitise the richness and variety which represents a place, particularly when place-specific and cultural coding systems are disposed of. Further to these acts of visual cultural cleansing in streets whose diverse conglomeration of signs presents rich and expressive community values, culture, history and myth, photographs have been placed on derelict buildings to mimic active businesses, annotated by signage that is equally redundant, other than reinforcing the full rebranding of place. These fake shop fronts are a Northern Ireland-wide phenomenon, a veneer designed to cover up decaying high streets. In number, they had been steadily increasing in towns and decreasing in the city since their introduction around 2013 and remain to a large extent in villages across Northern Ireland. A transatlantic export, these fake shop fronts originated in New York in the 1980s under Mayor Ed Koch and have been adopted as a solution to visible economic decline by the then Northern Ireland Department for Social Development. In Northern Ireland, fake shop fronts appeared prior to the much anticipated G8 Summit in June 2013 when County Fermanagh District Council sanctioned them as part of a £1 million makeover in preparation for the event. This example here is actually from 5 Mile Town in County Tyrone, but it's on the main route from the international airport to Fermanagh. The fake front initiative was aimed at underdeveloped sites at the entrance to the town and then right throughout the county and in other counties across towns and villages to make them look better and more aesthetically pleasing. The American media dubbed the scene in the Fermanagh Lakeland at that time as fake land. And this idea of a fake commercial landscape has now spread to other cities and towns and became increasingly apparent in less economically viable parts of Belfast. Similarly, the hosting of the first two legs of the 2014 Giro d'Italia saw many towns and villages along the route receive significant fake makeovers and interventions. Commercial frontages of hundreds of properties were revitalised and improvements made across Northern Ireland in what was an ongoing process. Decisions on which premises to focus on were undertaken on a block-by-block basis, with those blocks of buildings broken by streets or nodes, most deemed to be in need of intervention, receiving work. Owners of premises were provided with a choice of 3 drawings providing signage solutions, and from these they were asked to choose a pre-vetted design. This apparent participation in the process has some semblance of democracy. However, a panel of government, business and Arts Council representatives ultimately decided the appearance of signage. Colour suggestions were received from architects involved, and these architects changed over the term of the project and depended on successful public tenders and procurement processes. With each change in contract, different materials were sourced with solutions provided for signage and installed en masse by the same group of creators. It is this process of decision-making that has ensured the eradication of local cultural codes on signage, such as letterform, colour or imagery, that might be traditionally associated with place. In visibly declining socio-economic environments, the range of measures for intervention may range from signage alone to painting of facades, or, where derelict properties are encountered, the installation of fake shop fronts. There is undoubtedly a problem to be addressed, as high streets face continued economic pressure and display high rates of vacancy or dereliction. In Belfast, the arterial routes of the city are particularly affected, as they have been, due to planning and major road initiatives, combined with still existing peace walls, commercially cut off from the city centre. The isolated economies in some arterial routes in towns or villages ensures a continued blight to local urban environments. As a treatment for this, placing photographs over derelict properties is, at best, an unsatisfactory measure to confront continued serious socio-economic and societal decline. A survey reported by the BBC stated that Northern Ireland has the highest town centre shop vacancy rate in the United Kingdom. The survey indicated that 14% of shops in Northern Ireland's high streets and shopping centres are empty, compared to the UK average of 14%. Another report indicated that almost a quarter of shops in Belfast are vacant, while across Northern Ireland the number of empty shops has risen. The research behind the report, carried out by commercial property agency Lisney, suggested that 23%, or almost 1 in 4 shops in Belfast, is now lying vacant, and in Northern Ireland as a whole that figure is 19%. That action needs to be taken to address decline in urban environments is certain. If buildings and signage are not well maintained, further socio-economic decline may occur, vandalism and crime rates may rise, poor maintenance may lead to further decline in building condition, dereliction leading to further dereliction. Broken window theory may come into practice. Conversely, where community stakeholders can take pride in the appearance of the built environment and both buildings and signage are well maintained, this trend may be reversed, thus discouraging vandalism and crime, which becomes unacceptable to the community. Nevertheless, short-term measures such as fake shop fronts are seldom considered to be a good solution and do not contribute to the economy of place in a practical way for the good of the community. The Ulster Architectural Heritage Society has, for example, set out possible measures to address vacancy issues. They suggest a range of options for vacant premises, which they term meanwhile uses, to include pop-up shops or using the building for charitable or social benefit purposes, run by community or voluntary groups. This would, in some instances, allow properties to be temporarily maintained, to have the presence of people and make a positive contribution to place. To refer to fake shop fronts as an optical illusion is an insufficient description of how they may be perceived. The fronts are comprised of photographs, usually on paper, sometimes vinyl, applied to windows, doorways, or in some instances the whole of the building facade, to give the initial impression that the scene is actually one of a thriving business. In 2014, one derelict public house on Belfast Shore Road, the Boundary Bar, beside a key motorway entrance or exit, had what could be described as a tent-like structure draped over the roof. Its rooftop tarpaulin mimicked a thatched roof, while at the same time the front of the building received a fake facade and signage. The impression for someone unfamiliar with the area was likely, or intended to be, that the pub was still an active business. The re-imaging of the bar to improve rundown buildings along the route of the Giro d'Italia cycling race was enabled by a grant from the Northern Ireland Environment Minister in order to tackle eyesore properties in parts of North Belfast. The window dressing on the bar, located in a severely socio-economically deprived part of the city, did nothing to improve the local economy, instead providing an example of how tourists and visitors are given priority over its citizens. Following bad weather and high winds, by late 2015 the tarpaulin of the imitation thatched roof had been untethered and disappeared, once again leaving the underlying structure exposed. If these fake frontages have a role to play in window dressing the city for major events and to project an image for tourism and visitors that is more palatable than the truth, they can, if solely dictated by the lifespan and durability of materials, be only effective in the short term. According to one retail analyst, the only way to make vacant premises better is to spend money encouraging would-be occupiers to set up businesses and get people coming through their doors spending money. This view is echoed by public opinion. The shop fronts are cosmetic surgery for serious wounds, said one person. They are looking after the banks instead of saving good business. Unlike traditional signage used by active businesses, fake fronts are often only superficially related to their situation, being photographic representations of shop fronts from other places. Real shop fronts in a locale are often representative of the local economy, with goods catering to local societal needs and desires according to socio-economic means. The connotations suggest that the image, photograph of windows and goods is real, but contrary to this, no consumer transaction can take place. Another factor in how these fake fronts are interpreted may be adjustments to the photographic image. Often the image appears too light or dark for the time of day, and the sense of three-dimensional depth is either significantly diminished or in some cases completely removed. Fake shop fronts can be seen as acceptable introducers of ideas, but goods within these cannot be consumed, clothes cannot be worn, books cannot be read, food cannot be eaten, no commerce can take place, and no benefit in terms of affordances of place is offered. Historically, the Newtonards Road in East Belfast was a successful industry-based area, but since the decline in the shipyard and other traditional industries, it has been in economic decline. The road has many sectarian murals and has outbreaks of violence due to the segregated nature of its communities. Initiatives undertaken in the 1960s to improve roads infrastructure, the motorway and ring roads, have left this road cut off from the city centre and its thriving economy, adding to socio-economic deprivation and high unemployment. Here are 3 examples of the same stores over the last 11 years. Yale.com currently lists just 2 bookstores outside the city centre or university district, one of which is a faith bookshop and another Irish language. The presence of a bookstore in an area of high social deprivation is a slightly unusual choice and would seem more targeted at passing traffic from the more affluent Hollywood and Stormont areas of Belfast. There is no roof on the property, and as of 2015, that you can see in the 2015 image, and that means really that landlords of buildings without roofs have no rateable value and don't pay government taxes. These 2 examples of the same building from 2015 to 2022, and 2015 whenever the facade material was fresh and then in 2022 the building has just been left to deteriorate further. These three examples of shop fronts in the Lower Newtownards Road show the traditional sign in 2011 of Jordan's Bakers was then redeveloped and financial support given by government to redevelop that sign, and that has since closed. And then temporary covering of the other shop space with the Mahud's bicycle shop, and that is now completely disintegrated and been removed. The 4 images taken between 2011 and 2022 shows this building before and after the facade was erected for the Giro d'Italia, and just 1 year after the 2014 event it was already showing signs of considerable deterioration. The building has now reverted to visible and obvious vacancy. There are many visual cues to indicate, even without close inspection, that fake shop fronts are very short term. Dishonest and abstracted realities sit within the physicality of real shops on a street. Although designed to veneer the problem of vacancy and dereliction, their short-term existence does little to improve the appearance of place, especially when they start to show evidence of disrepair. Similarly, when closed hotels and domestic dwellings are given the facade treatment, this denotes an artificial inhabitancy. Scratch the glossy surface and it quickly loses some of its sheen. The tourist-friendly image of renewal, which consultancy firm PricewaterhouseCoopers referred to as the veneer of prosperity, is just one part of the picture. Behind its facade are thousands of disadvantaged children and their families enduring some of the worst levels of poverty in the UK. Neither do these facades contribute to the economy of place. Instead, appeasing commuters and tourists and promoting a narrative that the fake built environment as an alternative reality is an improvement. Created at high cost, the negative impact on local society and physical infrastructure will inevitably put further pressure on the development of communities and inhibit social interactivity. In terms of conclusions, solutions require meaningful local government engagement. We believe that local and cultural indicators need to be integrated into those solutions. There should be a local needs analysis. The repair culture also then needs to be developed in areas of social deprivation and in fact right across society. Longitudinal economic impact needs to be measured against investment and again successful international exemplars. We need to know who's doing the right things where and how those great ideas can be brought to the local economy. An adaptive reuse approach should be taken to grow a community ecosystem, and the community sustainability measures should be integrated into government strategy. Penultimately, walking and cycling access should form part of the community development planning process, and regular reviews of temporary facades needs to be integrated into the development process. Thank you.